It was supposed to be just another quiet lunch for David Beckham. He had arrived in New York 2 days earlier on a brief break from his intense schedule with Inter Miami. The city buzzed with energy, but Beckham craved anonymity, a rare luxury for a man who couldn't walk down the street without being recognized. Dressed in a faded hoodie, a simple pair of jeans and worn sneakers, he looked more like a tired traveler than a global icon. His beard had grown in slightly, his hair tucked under a cap pulled low over his eyes. He had perfected the art of blending in. Tucked into a narrow street off the Lower East Side was a tiny family-run diner called Rosie's Place. Beckham had discovered it years ago when he was in town for a charity match and had returned quietly ever since whenever he needed peace. The food was warm and unpretentious, the kind of meal that felt like a hug on a plate. And most importantly, the regulars respected each other's privacy. He slipped into his usual booth near the window, ordering a hearty brunch: steak and eggs, roasted potatoes, sourdough toast, fresh orange juice, and a slice of blueberry pie for later. As the rain tapped gently on the glass, Beckham leaned back, letting the warmth of the coffee cup in his hands center him. Outside, the sidewalk shimmered with puddles, and people rushed past with umbrellas and raincoats. Inside, the low hum of conversation mingled with the sizzle from the open kitchen. For the first time in weeks he felt still. That stillness was gently interrupted by a soft knock on the glass beside him. He turned, expecting maybe a fan or someone trying to get his attention. Instead, he saw a small face peering in through the window. A girl no older than 10, with dark tangled hair and oversized clothes that barely clung to her thin frame. Her eyes were wide but not pleading. She wasn't asking to come in. She was simply watching the plate of food that had just been placed in front of Beckham. He stared back for a second, unsure what to do. The girl seemed startled and took a step back from the window. Then, with hesitation, she opened the diner door. The tiny bell above the frame jingled, and she stepped inside. The hostess raised an eyebrow, clearly ready to shoo her out. But Beckham subtly raised his hand. "It's okay," he said gently. The girl looked at him, cautious but curious. She walked up to his table, her shoes squishing with water, leaving little footprints on the floor. "Excuse me," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "I don't want to bother you. I'm not asking for money. But, do you think I could maybe have some of the food you won't finish?" The word struck something deep inside Beckham. In all his years of travel, charity work, and public engagements, he had seen poverty before. But there was something different here. This wasn't a plea. It was a request made with dignity. A child who understood hunger but still respected the boundaries of others. He gestured to the booth across from him. "How about you sit down and have some of it with me?" The girl hesitated. "I don't want to get in trouble." "You won't," Beckham assured her. "I promise." "What's your name?" "Leah." "Nice to meet you, Leah. I'm David." She climbed into the booth slowly, her tiny hands resting on the table as she watched him slide his plate over. He ordered an extra set of utensils and asked the waitress for another cup of cocoa. They ate in silence for the first few minutes. Leah chewed carefully, almost reverently, as if afraid the food would disappear if she rushed. Beckham didn't press her with questions. He simply watched her eat, the way a father might watch his child after a long, hard day. Eventually, Leah looked up. "You're really nice, Mr. David. Most people don't even look at me. Some tell me to go away." Beckham swallowed a sip of his juice. "That's not right. No one should treat a child like that." She shrugged. "I know I look dirty. I try to stay clean. But we don't have a place to wash every day." "Where are your parents?" "My mom passed away last year. My dad, I don't know where he is anymore. He left after she died. I've been with my aunt, but she left the city 2 weeks ago and didn't take me." The simplicity of her answer made it even more devastating. Beckham felt his throat tighten. He had children of his own. The thought of one of them ever facing something like this was unbearable. He reached into his coat pocket, not for his wallet but for his phone. He paused. Calling social services was the practical thing to do. But something about Leah's calmness, her pride, made him hesitate. "Are you in school?" "Not since my aunt left. I used to go. I liked it. I like reading." "Would you like to go back?" She nodded eagerly. "More than anything." Beckham finished his meal slowly, letting her savor every bite. Then he looked at her seriously. "Leah, how would you feel about staying in a safe place tonight? With warm food and a clean bed? I have some friends who help kids like you. It won't be scary, I promise. You don't have to decide now. But I want to help you. Not just today. Long term." Her eyes welled up. "What? You don't even know me? Because I have kids too. And if they were ever lost, I'd want someone to help them." They sat there for a while longer. Eventually, Leah agreed. Beckham made a few quiet calls, arranging for someone from a private children's support organization to meet them discreetly. Before they left, he handed the waitress a generous tip and thanked the kitchen staff. Outside, the rain had stopped. Leah walked beside him, her small hand holding onto the edge of his jacket. She didn't know who he really was. To her, he wasn't a famous footballer. He was just someone who had seen her when others looked away. And that, perhaps, made all the difference. 2 weeks had passed since the unforgettable encounter at that quiet Miami diner, where David Beckham had quietly shared his meal and his heart with a little girl named Ellie. The moment had clung to him like a soft echo, resurfacing in his thoughts during idle moments or quiet mornings. The child's eyes, a blend of gratitude and hardship, haunted him. She had disappeared into the city's faceless crowd, and he hadn't seen her again since that night. But David wasn't the kind of man who let such things go. Behind his sharp suits, flawless interviews, and global fame, was someone raised to care, to notice, and to act. His father had always told him, "It's not the spotlight that makes a man, but what he does in the shadows." He decided to return to the diner, not as a celebrity, not with a camera crew or security entourage, but simply as a man trying to finish what had started. It was a chilly Thursday evening, the kind where Miami's usual warmth had been chased away by a rare coastal wind. David wore a navy hoodie, dark jeans, and a pair of worn trainers. His baseball cap was tugged low. It wasn't a disguise, but a chance to blend in. He parked his car discreetly a block away, preferring to walk under the flickering streetlights, the sounds of the city humming around him. As he neared the diner, he noticed something different. The place looked more crowded. A couple of teenage boys leaned on their bikes outside, laughing. A woman was walking out with a large bag of takeout. But what caught his attention was a new chalkboard sign leaning beside the door. "Pay what you can night, every Thursday, 6 to 9 p.m. Everyone eats." David's heart skipped. He stepped inside. The interior was buzzing with a warm energy. It was no longer the quiet, almost forgotten diner he remembered. People of all backgrounds filled the booths and stools. There were families, seniors, a few rough-looking teenagers, and others who clearly hadn't had a hot meal in a while. The air smelled of grilled cheese and tomato soup, and the jukebox played soft Motown in the background. Behind the counter stood Maria, the same middle-aged woman who had served him last time. She wore a faded pink apron and a smile that somehow reached past exhaustion. She glanced up and paused. Recognition sparked in her eyes, but she didn't call it out. "Back again, huh?" she said, pouring coffee into a chipped mug and sliding it toward him. "Thought that was you." David nodded and offered a soft smile. "I heard the food's still great." Maria gave a chuckle, then lowered her voice. "You should have told me who you were that night." "I was just hungry," David replied, and trying to figure out what to do with a second cheeseburger. Maria studied him for a beat longer, then leaned in. "You should know, after you left, the girl came back. Couple nights later. She asked for you. I didn't have anything to give her but soup and some cookies. She didn't ask for much." David's heart clenched. "Do you know where she went?" "She never said. But she started showing up here on Thursdays. Like clockwork. Sit in the same booth, far back by the window." David glanced at the booth she mentioned. It was empty now. He waited. Half an hour passed, then another. He ordered a simple meal, barely touched it. The crowd began to thin out. The scent of food slowly gave way to the sterile smell of cleaning supplies. The teenagers outside had disappeared, and so had the laughter. Then, just as he was beginning to think maybe tonight wouldn't be the night, she walked in. Ellie. Her hair was pulled into a small ponytail, still wild at the edges. She wore a jacket 2 sizes too big and shoes that looked like they were barely holding together. But her eyes were just the same. Observant, cautious, curious. She didn't see him at first. She walked straight to the booth near the window, climbed in, and hugged her arms around herself like a reflex. Maria brought her a warm bowl of mac and cheese without being asked. David approached slowly. "Mind if I sit with you?" Ellie looked up sharply, her eyes widening. For a moment she said nothing. Then a small, almost invisible smile tugged at the corner of her lips. "You came back. I told you I might." She didn't answer, just looked down at her food. David slid into the booth across from her. "How've you been?" She shrugged. "Same. Better on Thursdays." They sat in silence for a while, the kind that isn't awkward but honest. Then Ellie spoke. "I told my brother about you. He didn't believe me. Said famous people don't eat at places like this. They don't share burgers." "Maybe he's right," David replied. "But maybe I'm not like most famous people." She looked at him for a long beat. "Why did you help me?" David didn't answer right away. "Because I was hungry once too. Not for food, but for someone to notice me." That night, Ellie opened up, slowly, like a tightly wounded bud learning how to bloom. Her mother had passed 2 years ago. Her father had drifted away soon after. She and her older brother bounced between couch surfing and shelters. School was on and off. Life was more off than on. She didn't complain. She stated it like facts, as if she'd already learned that the world didn't listen to whining. David listened. And the more he heard, the more something hardened in his gut. Not anger, but resolve. Over the next hour, he made her laugh twice and even managed to get her to take half of his fries. She pocketed the mini ketchup packets for later and asked if soccer was really that fun. Before they parted, David handed her a small envelope. "No pressure. Just, if you ever want to reach me." Inside was a prepaid phone, already programmed with his private number and a note that said, "For emergencies. Or just to talk." She took it silently and nodded. The following week, David called in a few favors. He had always believed in using his fame for good, but this time it felt personal. He contacted a local youth shelter and asked what it would take to sponsor a safe living space for a family. He got in touch with a principal from a nearby charter school and inquired about enrolling 2 children mid-semester. He called Adidas and arranged for boxes of sneakers and warm jackets to be sent to a list of underprivileged kids Maria had helped compile from diner regulars. None of it was announced. No press releases, no Instagram posts. He told his team, "This one stays in the quiet." He returned every Thursday and slowly, Ellie opened more. She started bringing her brother, Marcus, a wiry teenager who eyed David like he was trying to figure out what the catch was. Over time, the suspicion faded. Marcus became a regular, occasionally drawing sketches on napkins that David kept folded in his wallet. One night, Ellie brought a school flyer with a circle drawn around father-daughter dance. "I don't have one of those," she said, pushing the paper toward him without looking up. David cleared his throat. "Well, I don't dance that great, but I've been to a few." "You were a Spice Girl's husband," Marcus mumbled, barely hiding a grin. "You've definitely danced." David chuckled. "Guilty." So he went. In a simple black suit, no fanfare. The school gym was decorated with paper stars and a disco ball from the 90s. He held Ellie's hand during slow songs, made her laugh during the conga line, and took a picture with her that he later framed and left at the diner for Maria to hang. Ellie's world began to shift. Slowly, yes, but unmistakably. It wasn't just about food anymore. It was about possibility. David Beckham didn't plan to visit the diner again that week. He had already made sure Emma and her younger brother Noah were safe, their meals at school covered, their mother's job application expedited, and the family temporarily housed through one of the club's local partner programs. He had moved through those efforts quietly, careful not to make it about himself. But something gnawed at him, a quiet pull in his chest he couldn't ignore. It wasn't just about charity or sympathy, it was deeper than that. There was something about that little girl's dignity, the way she had asked for leftover food not with desperation but with pride still intact. Something about how she placed her brother before herself, that lingered in Beckham's thoughts long after he had left the restaurant that rainy afternoon. That Saturday, Beckham returned to the diner alone again, this time with no cameras, no staff, no security. He wore a plain gray hoodie and jeans, blending in with the breakfast crowd. The waitress from the other day recognized him, her eyes widening slightly before he gave a small nod that said, "Please keep it quiet." She simply smiled and brought him coffee, understanding instinctively. As he stirred his coffee, Beckham's eyes scanned the room. He didn't see Emma or Noah, and part of him wondered if they'd ever come back. He hoped not because it meant things had gotten better for them. But just as he was finishing his toast, a voice piped up behind him. "Mr. Beckham?" He turned. It was Emma. But this time she wasn't in oversized clothes. She was wearing a neat, second-hand uniform, one of those affordable school polos with the district logo embroidered on it. Her hair was tied back in a ponytail, and she held a small envelope in her hand. "I wanted to say thank you," she said, "for what you did, for helping us. My mom got a call from the school office and then from someone at the city services. I don't know how, but we're okay now." Beckham smiled, genuinely moved. He didn't say anything at first, just gestured for her to sit down. She did, sitting across from him like an equal, like someone who had earned her place at that table. "I didn't do much," he finally said. "You're the one who looked after your brother. You did more than most adults would." Emma's cheeks flushed. "So, I wanted to give you this." She handed him the envelope. Inside was a drawing. A crayon sketch of him sitting at the booth with a mountain of food on the table and two little figures, a girl and a boy, smiling beside him. In the top corner, she had written, "Thank you for seeing me." Beckham felt something twist in his chest. Not sadness. Not guilt. Something more beautiful, acknowledgement. He tucked the drawing into his coat pocket like it was made of gold. "What do you want to be when you grow up, Emma?" he asked. She looked at him and without hesitation said, "A teacher, so I can help kids like me." He smiled. "Then I think we should make sure you get there." And that's how it began. Beckham quietly launched a scholarship program for underprivileged children in the Miami-Dade area, beginning with Emma and Noah. But it didn't stop there. He didn't just fund tuition or books. He created a mentorship network, pairing athletes, artists, and professionals with kids from struggling backgrounds. The program grew faster than anyone expected because it was based on real human connection. A few months later, Inter Miami hosted a small halftime tribute during a low-stakes match. Beckham stepped onto the field, not as an owner or a global icon, but as a man representing something far more powerful: compassion. He didn't give a speech that day. Instead, he invited Emma and Noah onto the pitch. The crowd, unsure at first, burst into applause when they saw the kids wave shyly, and Beckham simply put a hand on their shoulders. In the stands, a woman in a cheap coat wept silently, Emma's mom, who had been given a job at the stadium's administrative office. After the match, as Beckham walked toward the locker room, a journalist caught up to him. "You've done a lot lately," the reporter said. "Any statement you want to make?" Beckham thought for a moment. "Everyone deserves to be seen," he replied. "Sometimes that's all it takes." And that was it. But the story didn't end there. Years passed. Emma became the first in her family to graduate high school with honors. She went on to college, on a full ride through the Beckham Foundation, majoring in education. Noah too flourished. He joined the Youth Football League sponsored by Inter Miami, where he showed promise as a quiet but determined midfielder. Beckham kept tabs on them, not as a benefactor but as a friend. He showed up to Emma's graduation in sunglasses and a baseball cap, cheering from the back row. When Noah scored his first goal in a junior league final, Beckham was in the bleachers, clapping silently. The world may never know most of these moments. There were no press releases, no media campaigns. Just the quiet heartbeat of one man choosing to see, to care, to act. And years later, when Beckham was honored for his philanthropic work at a black tie gala, he took the stage holding a familiar envelope in his hand. "I once received a drawing," he said to the crowd, "from a little girl who didn't ask for much, just some leftover food. She gave me something far more valuable, a reminder that greatness isn't measured by trophies or money, but by how we treat people when no one's watching." The crowd rose to their feet, applauding. Beckham stepped down, but not before whispering into the mic. If you want more stories like this, real stories about real people, follow our journey at the dashing number 7. There's a lot more heart to share.